My Adventures with Superman is the brand new, hotly anticipated DC animated series that dropped last night at midnight on Adult Swim. The show, even seeing the light of day at all, is something of a small miracle, as most people, myself included, assumed that it got wiped away in the bigger HBO Max upheavals of the last couple years. The two-part debut was entitled Adventures of Normal Man, and in case you're new here and haven't seen my Young Justice or Harley Quinn videos, I'm Cape Joel, and this is the video series where I give my thoughts and feelings on the episode that was, while also shouting out any comic book Easter eggs or references I can find. So with that out of the way, let's hop right on in, shall we? Now, first things first, you'll probably notice that this show eschews past Superman animated shows by choosing to go hard with a brand new anime art style, but the anime influences don't stop there. We get a bombastic opening credit sequence that actually wasn't here in the two-parter, and that's a bit of a shame. As well as Superman himself even getting his own Sailor Moon-style magical girl transformation later on in episode 2, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Animation is handled by Studio Mir, an absolute titan of the industry, with such heavy hitters under their belts as The Legend of Korra, The Boondocks, as well as the last couple seasons of Young Justice, and even Harley Quinn. As episode 1 begins, we're back again in Smallville, Kansas. We get to see the first time Clark Kent uses his powers to help save a young mother and her baby from what would have been a very fatal car accident. And yes, I can already hear some of the more cynical and pessimistic amongst you rolling your eyes and saying, oh, is this really what we needed? Another Superman origin story? And yeah, I kind of agree. Superman gets more origin stories than just about any other superhero under the sun. We basically know the story backwards and forwards, but I'd also be lying if I said I didn't always get a nice warm feeling. In scenes just like this one, when Clark first understands the full breadth of his power and goes flying for the very first time, I think he'd have to be made of stone to not be affected just a little bit by this, and the show understands this and pulls this scene off greatly, I felt. Now, flash forward to the present, and Clark is already living in Metropolis. He's not living alone either, as in this version of the story, Jimmy Olsen isn't just Superman's best pal, he's also his best roommate. What a nice touch. This is of course Superman very, very early in his development. He's still struggling to control his super strength, and we get that scene that is for some reason in every superhero story where he accidentally messes up the bathroom. But also keep in mind, this is where the show starts throwing its first curveballs too. Again, this two-parter is called Adventures of Normal Man, and that refers to the fact that Clark doesn't want to be a hero. Hell, he barely even wants to be super, he just wants to be a normal guy going to his normal first day at his brand new job as an intern for the Daily Planet. Clark in this show is of course voiced by Jack Quaid, and oh man, isn't it funny seeing the dude who plays the normal guy on The Boys fighting an evil Superman figure, and here in this show he gets to be the actual Superman. Quaid won me over pretty early on because he brings that right level of everyman befuddlement that is so intrinsic to a character like Clark. Now at the other end of the episode we have young Lois Lane, here voiced by YouTuber turned off-Broadway star Alice Lee. She's an intern as well, working for Perry White, but we already see that she hungers for more and is punching way above her weight class with a story about trying to track down stolen high-tech military robots. I gotta say, this is actually a very interesting new take on Lois Lane, because in the comics she's almost always shown to be more established, or at the very least a more respected journalist at the Planet when Clark begins his own superhero career, so to see them both at the bottom and needing to work their way up should give the series a lot of storytelling potential. She's also a lot peppier than the more hard-ass Lois we see in other adaptations of the Superman story, and I have to wonder if that's going to change over time. Are we going to see her get more serious and more hardened? And also because I'm sure a lot of people are typing in the comments section right now, yes, Lois in this show looks a lot like an older version of the main character from the Owl House. Are you happy now I brought it up? I should also probably take this time to mention Jimmy Olsen, the third member of the intern trifecta. He's voiced by Ishmael Sahid, an actor who's having a real breakthrough year right now between this and that Jury Duty show. The newer angle they seem to have come up with for Jimmy is that he's something of an excitable conspiracy theorist talking about mer people and intelligent French gorillas, and because this is a show based in the DC universe, we know at least half of what he's saying is probably going to end up to be true. Perry White ends up telling Lois that she's only to train Clark and Jimmy as new interns and not follow up on the robot case, so of course Lois lies to both men and decides to chase down the story anyway. Ah, now there's the hard-headed comic book Lois we all know and love. But who exactly did steal these military robots? Well, a group of paramilitary thieves led by a woman named Leslie and her partner in crime, a man named Badger. Comic fans like myself probably already clocked right away that Leslie was none other than Leslie Willis, aka longtime Superman foe Livewire. Though the show seeks to very much overhaul her origin. Instead of being a radio shock jock obsessed with Superman and who got struck by lightning, here she's shown as being a much more traditional, if no less competent criminal. In a fun reveal, it's revealed that Lois's big contact on the streets turns out to be none other than a new adorable version of Flip Johnson and the News Kid Legion, a fun updating of a comic book deep cut, the News Boy Legion. Here in this series, their role is basically the same. They deliver copies of the Daily Planet, and because of that, the kids know basically everything that's happening around the city. Well, geez, we know we're in a fantasy world now because apparently people still read traditional newspapers in this world. The kids also drop reference to a guy named Mr. Jurgens, which is almost certainly a reference to Jan Jurgens, a long-tenured Superman writer with a lot of great stories under his belt. With Flip and the kids' help, Clark is able to riddle out that the robot thieves are using trash trucks to ship their stolen goods around the city unseen. Together, he and the intern trio track down the trucks back to their source, only to realize that the crooks are long gone. It's here Clark finally wises up to the fact that Lois has been lying to him all day, and going with her might very well cost him and Jimmy their jobs on their first day. Stubborn Lois refuses to give up the chase, though, pushing Clark away, even though the two of them have basically spent the entire episode blushing at each other. Which, you know what, focusing on the more romantic will they won't they aspect of Clark and Lois is actually probably a good direction for the show to go in. They are, after all, probably one of the longest reigning comic book couples, so yeah, why not? Lois and Jimmy end up finding the bad guys at the port, only to have another giant killer robot sicked on them. It's a good thing that Clark didn't actually go that far, as he's able to swoop on in and protect them. Granted, like I said before, this is the early adventures of Superman. Clark doesn't have heat vision or frost breath, he doesn't even have a costume, and has to steal a dock worker's outfit just so his friends don't clock him. Fighting just one robot proves to be a really hard battle for young Superman, and things only get more dire when Leslie activates the rest of the killbots to cover her escape. Thankfully, Lois, always with the eyes of a journalist, was able to find out how to turn the robots off. Well, all but one. Clark only manages to save Lois from the last one by tapping into another level of power he never thought possible. Basically, he goes even more Superman for a second. With the day officially saved, the good guys finally think they have a story to turn into Perry. Unfortunately, Jimmy's camera only took blurry pictures. Perry does, however, say that if they can somehow manage to score an interview with this strange new flying man, he may actually let the three out of the doghouse. As the episode comes to a close, Lois apologizes to Clark for lying and says it'll be nothing but honesty from here on out as they chase their brand new story, Who is the Mysterious Superman, which of course only leads to more awkwardness as it's now Clark who's keeping the big secret. Now, as part 2 of this premiere begins, we're treated to another flashback from Clark's childhood. It seems with the help of Ma and Pa Kent, he did actually try and activate the craft that brought him to Earth so many years ago so that he might maybe finally learn the truth about his origin, but sadly, things go from bad to worse real quick. For starters, poor Clark can't understand a damn thing that his hologram father is trying to say to him, mainly because he's speaking to him in Kryptonian. And hey, let's talk about Jor-El for a second in this show. They really go nuts with the design. Normally, Jor-El is painted as a wise sage or a sensitive scientist, but here he's shown as like a King Conan warrior type with an eye patch and long hair. At first, I thought that this was original to the show, but then I was instantly reminded of Mr. Oz, probably the last new thing they did with Jor-El for years in the comics. I'm probably reading too much into it, but hey, could be foreshadowing, who knows. Activating the ship also caused the ground to open up, and Clark almost lost Ma and Pa that day, which essentially caused him to completely close himself off from his Kryptonian heritage, viewing it as something scary and dangerous. And honestly, I like this new twist on the classic origin. It makes it feel fresh and new, and also explains why Clark is only now feeling the pull to become Superman at all. Back in the present, the intern trio are setting up their brand new office and making plans to track down Superman. It's here we learn that Jimmy isn't just a regular conspiracy theorist, he runs a whole alien-centric stream under the name Flamebird, which is actually a hell of a reference. You see, in the comics, Flamebird is actually the name of several other DC heroes, as well as part of an ancient Kryptonian legend about the Nightwing and the Flamebird. Yes, that's right, Dick Grayson gets his name from that story, in case you were wondering. Fearing that Lois and Jimmy might be getting too close to his secret, Clark fakes being sick and retreats back to the family farm in Smallville. Man, you know what, I really like it when Ma and Pa Kent are both alive and able to be characters. Pa especially made me laugh out loud in this one. Clark hopes to once again uncover the truth about his life before Earth, and to his shock and surprise, the ship that brought him to Earth has only grown in the intervening years. Over with Leslie, though, we see that her heist did not go unnoticed. Agents of a mysterious organization are now hunting her down across Metropolis, forcing her to arrange a sit-down. This dovetails quite nicely with Lois and Jimmy's story, who are still very much hot on Leslie's trail. It's here too Lois and Jimmy settle into their classic comic book dynamic, with Lois always leading the way and Jimmy loyally following behind, even though now it's funny and played for laughs because they're both interns. Lois has just been at the paper a little bit longer than him. Jimmy also continues continues to prod Lois about her clearly developing crush on Clark, which in its own way is a fun reversal from the classic comic stories wherein normally Lois has a crush on Superman first. Now, when Clark finally does open up and enter his childhood spaceship, he's once again met with the same problem. He can't understand a damn thing Hollow Dad is trying to tell him, so instead, Jor-El tries to show him, his mother, the destruction of Krypton before eventually gifting him his classic Superman costume, again, complete with an anime-style transformation sequence. God, I love this. I will say though, at first I was a little disappointed about the new origin for the costume because I always liked in the books it was Ma Kent who made the suit for her son, but the show is smart enough to actually split the difference by having Ma give Clark the classic belt and trunks combo. It breaks up all the blue and it's iconic, what's not to love? Now who exactly, you might be asking, was gunning for Leslie? Well, they don't name him in the episode, but it's clearly Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, here voiced by friggin' Chris Parnell of all people. Wow, a man known almost entirely for comedy. He wouldn't have been my first choice, but he's certainly an interesting choice. I also love how this is very much young Deathstroke before he lost his eye and gained his trademark eye patch, but the art does that anime pretty boy thing where his hair is always covering up the eye that he's eventually one day gonna lose. Very clever choice. It's here too, Livewire reveals that she always had electric powers, and a big fight between her and Deathstroke breaks out with poor Lois and Jimmy trapped in the crossfire. This means Superman has to rush back to Metropolis and defend them from certain death. It's during the battle Livewire's power source, a strange crystal on her bat, gets hit by Deathstroke, causing her to not only grow unstable, but take on a pure energy form much more in line with her classic comic book look. Superman wins the day by tanking Livewire's hits and also removing the crystal, which seems to give him strange visions of an alien fleet and a portal opening up in the sky somewhere. Oh yeah, this is definitely going to be important later on. If I was to make some crazy guesses, the villains in this show get their power from Kryptonian tech now. Maybe the portal was the Phantom Zone and maybe the ships were Black Zero. I know I've been right before making crazy theories in these videos, so if I'm right, you all owe me a Coke. Agreed, agreed. With the day once again saved, Perry actually agrees to print Lois's story with Jimmy's pictures this time. Lois goes back to Clark's apartment so they can all celebrate, and once again the two end up becoming romantically flustered before it's ultimately revealed that Perry gave the trio's hard-won byline to Cat Grant and Steve Lombard, two more news people from the comics, a fact of which leaves Lois absolutely livid. Oh, but we're not done yet. As the final episode of this two-parter comes to a close, we see Livewire being tortured in some sort of governmental facility. Deathstroke never got the stolen tech back for his paymasters, and it's revealed that all of that stuff is now in the hands of petty crooks all across Metropolis. We can also clearly see that one of Deathstroke's collaborators is none other than Amanda Waller of Task Force X, which is one of the several other rather interesting little name drops that they make, which will certainly end up being major plot points later. And so that was the first two episodes of My Adventures with Superman, and I gotta say, this was a strong start that shows a ton of potential for the series moving forward. It's bright, colorful, occasionally funny with a great enthusiastic voice cast, some great Easter eggs for longtime comic readers like myself to chew on, enjoyable action scenes, and the promise of way more to come. I think the show manages to remix and remaster and change up things just enough from the classic Superman mythos while also respecting and staying true to those characters and the world around them. I will say I don't know why this one got such a late time slot for its premiere, considering that it has a real all-ages appeal to it. Deathstroke doesn't use real swords, there's no blood or swearing. I know Adult Swim is kind of going through a little rebranding period right now with this and shows like Unicorn Warriors, and as I mentioned before, the fact that this show even saw the light of day at all is a victory in and of itself, so I won't question it too much. I hope this one does find an audience because it's been way too long since we've had an animated Superman show on TV, and I'm definitely rooting for this one. So until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, subscribe, hit that little bell so you're always up to date on my next big Superman video.